The aliens had always been curious about Earth. From the safety of their advanced spacecraft, high above the planet, they watched as the humans below went about their daily lives. They had studied Earth from afar, gathering data about the planet's strange life forms, the animals, the oceans, and the skies. But nothing could prepare them for what they were about to witness. Today, the aliens were not observing from their usual distance. This time, they had decided to get closer to the human military drills taking place on the ground. The aliens had always assumed that humans were weak and fragile creatures, easily defeated by any advanced civilization. After all, they were just another species among many, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But they had been hearing strange things about humanity lately, about their battles, their wars, and their growing power. Today, they would find out for themselves what all the fuss was about. As their ship descended into Earth's atmosphere, the aliens activated their cloaking technology, making sure they remained invisible to any human detection. They could still see everything, though. Their ship hovered silently over the vast training grounds, where the humans were holding their drills. The aliens marveled at the sight below. There were soldiers running in formation, tanks rolling across the fields, and helicopters slicing through the sky. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. The aliens could sense the precision in every movement, the synchronization in every action. The drill seemed like an ordinary exercise to the humans below, but to the aliens, it was something else entirely. They had never seen anything like it before. They had witnessed many species go through their own military drills in the past, but none had the energy, the discipline, and the strength of these humans. It was almost as if the humans were preparing for something far greater than a simple training session. They moved with a purpose that felt dangerous. Every soldier, every machine, every explosion seemed to have a deeper meaning. One alien, a young observer named Zorith, was the first to speak. "Are they practicing for war?" he asked quietly. His companion, an older and more experienced alien named Coulter, turned his attention to the chaos unfolding below them. "It appears so," he replied. "But there is something different about them. They do not seem afraid." The humans below were fighting a mock battle, but there was nothing pretend about the way they moved. The soldiers did not hesitate as they charged into action, as if they were already in the heat of a real battle. The explosions that rattled the ground only seemed to push them harder. The aliens watched in awe as human soldiers, some of whom were clearly injured, pushed through the pain and continued to carry out their missions. Zorith couldn't help but feel uneasy. How can they endure such punishment? These creatures are fragile. They should be breaking under the pressure, he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. Coulter, who had witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall, observed the humans more carefully. Perhaps it is not their bodies that are strong, but their will. There is something about their spirit. It is unlike anything I have ever seen. Zorith's mind raced as he tried to understand what he was witnessing. He had never seen a species push itself so hard, so relentlessly. The soldiers below were sweating, bleeding, and bruised, but they did not stop. They were like machines, but there was something human about them too, something that couldn't be explained by logic or technology. The more Zorith watched, the more he realized that humans weren't like any species the aliens had ever encountered. They had a drive, a hunger for survival, that went beyond the physical. The aliens had expected to see fear or hesitation, but there was none. These humans seemed to thrive in chaos. Zorith felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized how dangerous they could be. Coulter seemed to sense his unease. Do not be fooled by their small size or their simple technology. There is power in their determination. They are not as weak as they appear. Zorith couldn't tear his eyes away from the scene below. The soldiers were now engaged in hand-to-hand combat, showing incredible skill and strength. Even when one of them was knocked down, they quickly rose to their feet, ready to fight again. The aliens had seen many species fall apart under similar conditions, but not these humans. They were resilient in a way that was almost unnatural. As the humans continued their drills, Zorith found himself questioning everything he had believed about them. He had always thought that humans were just another primitive species, doomed to fall to a superior force. But now, he was beginning to see that they might not be so easy to conquer after all. In fact, he wondered if humanity could even be stopped. "Perhaps we have underestimated them," Zorith said quietly. "What if they are capable of more than we think?" Coulter turned his gaze back to the soldiers. "That is exactly what we must find out. For now, we remain hidden. But we must learn more about them, and we must decide if they are a threat, or if they are something far more dangerous than we ever imagined." The ship hovered silently above the chaos, the aliens' thoughts heavy with new questions. They had come to study humans, but what they had seen so far left them with more questions than answers. One thing was certain: humanity was not a species to be taken lightly. As the drills continued below, the aliens watched closely, aware that their understanding of Earth and its people was changing forever. The aliens, having witnessed the incredible resilience of the humans below, were now faced with a decision. Should they continue observing from a distance, or was it time to get closer and learn more? Zorith, still shaken by what he had seen, was eager to understand more about these strange beings. Coulter, though older and wiser, seemed to sense that something had shifted in the balance. He knew it was time to take the next step. The two aliens decided to move their ship closer to the human military drills. They had to remain hidden, of course. The humans might have no idea they were being watched, but if the aliens made any mistakes, they could easily be discovered. They activated their cloaking device once again, ensuring that their presence remained undetected by the humans on the ground. With the ship now just above the clouds, the aliens could see everything clearly. They had a perfect view of the drill zones below. But this time, they wouldn't just watch from afar. They would go down to the surface. Coulter issued the order, and the ship began its descent. Slowly, it moved down through the atmosphere, aiming for a remote area far from the main training zones. The last thing they wanted was to be discovered by the humans, especially during their most intense drills. They needed to remain unseen, so the ship touched down silently in a thick forest at the edge of the training ground, far from the eyes of any human soldiers. The ground beneath the ship was soft, and the thick trees around them provided ample cover. The aliens stepped out of the ship, still cloaked by their advanced technology. They were invisible to any human eyes. Their mission was clear: to observe the humans up close, to understand the true nature of their strength and endurance. The two aliens moved carefully, their steps light and quiet. They made their way to the edge of the forest, where they could see the soldiers on the ground below. The drills were in full swing, with soldiers running through obstacles, taking cover, and engaging in combat simulations. The intensity of the activity was even greater now that they were closer to it. The aliens could hear the sounds of gunfire, the roar of engines, and the shouts of the soldiers. The ground beneath them shook with every explosion. Zorith's heart raced as he watched the soldiers. Up close, the chaos seemed even more intense. The humans were relentless, each one working together as if their lives depended on it. They were so focused, so determined, that Zorith almost couldn't believe it. It was as if they were preparing for a real battle, except this was only a drill. And yet, the soldiers acted as though they were fighting for survival. One soldier caught Zorith's attention. He was young, no older than 20, and seemed to be struggling to keep up with the others. His face was covered in dirt, and his uniform was torn. Yet, he didn't stop. Even when another soldier collapsed beside him, the young man pressed forward, pushing through the pain. Zorith watched, captivated. How could someone so small, so fragile, continue despite all the odds stacked against him? Coulter stood silently beside him, watching the same soldier. "He is not stopping," Zorith observed. "Even when it seems like he has no strength left, he keeps going. Why?" Coulter studied the soldier for a moment. "It is not about strength, Zorith. It is about something deeper. The will to survive, the will to push forward no matter what. This soldier does not give up because he has a purpose. He is not alone in this battle. His comrades depend on him. Zorith thought about that for a moment. He had seen many species fight for survival, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans weren't just fighting for victory, they were fighting for each other. They were part of something bigger, something that bound them together. The aliens continued to watch, and as they did, they saw more soldiers who seemed to share that same relentless drive. The aliens had been wrong to underestimate the humans. Their strength was not just in their technology or their weapons. It was in their spirit, their unity, and their determination. Each soldier was part of a larger whole, and together, they were capable of incredible things. As the drills continued, the aliens couldn't help but feel a growing sense of awe. They had expected to find a primitive, weak species, but what they saw before them was something far more complex and dangerous. The soldiers fought with an intensity that the aliens had never seen before. There were no signs of fear, no hesitation. Even when they faced impossible odds, the humans pressed forward with everything they had. Zorith's mind raced. What were they witnessing? What was it about humans that made them so relentless? It was unlike anything the aliens had encountered before. They had seen species fight wars, but nothing like this. The humans were different. They had something special, something that gave them strength in the face of overwhelming adversity. Coulter watched his young companion closely. You are beginning to understand, aren't you? This is what makes them dangerous. Their strength comes from within. They are capable of great destruction, but they are also capable of great unity. Zorith nodded, still struggling to comprehend what he was witnessing. But how can we stop them if we need to? How can we fight against a species that will not back down? Coulter didn't answer right away. Instead, he continued to watch the humans below, his mind full of thoughts. He had been right to fear humanity. They were not like any species the aliens had encountered before. And yet, there was something about them, something that intrigued him. Despite the danger they posed, Coulter could not help but respect them. Perhaps, Coulter said finally, we do not need to stop them. Perhaps we should learn from them instead. Zorith looked up at his mentor, surprised. Learn from them, but they could be a threat to us. Coulter's eyes were filled with a quiet understanding. There is always something to learn from a species like this. Whether we choose to face them or not, humanity will always be a force to reckon with. And perhaps in time, they will show us what true strength is. As the aliens retreated into the shadows, still cloaked and unseen, they knew one thing for certain. The humans were not a species to be underestimated. The question was no longer if they could be defeated, but if they could be understood. The aliens had seen enough to know that humanity was not to be underestimated. Their strength was not just in their technology or weapons, but in their spirit, their drive to survive, and their relentless will to push forward even when the odds were stacked against them. The soldiers they had observed in the drills had shown extraordinary endurance, a depth of resolve that shook the aliens to their core. What they were witnessing was not just a training exercise. It was a glimpse into the heart of what made humans dangerous. As the aliens continued to watch, they began to see something else, something they had not fully understood until now. It wasn't just that humans were strong or capable of surviving in impossible situations. It was that they had something more. They had a sense of unity, a deep connection to one another that fueled their actions. When one soldier fell, the others rushed to help. They didn't fight for themselves alone. They fought for each other, for the greater good of their comrades. There was a bond between them that went beyond simple teamwork. It was the bond of survival, of shared purpose. And that bond made them stronger than anything the aliens had ever seen. Zorith was still trying to process what he had seen. He had always thought of humans as fragile creatures, easy to manipulate, easy to conquer. But now, he wasn't so sure. What he had witnessed over the past few hours had shaken his beliefs to their core. These humans were not like any species he had encountered. They didn't fight for glory or power. They fought for each other, for their survival, and that made them dangerous. Coulter, standing beside Zorith, seemed to sense his confusion. "You're beginning to understand now, aren't you?" he asked quietly. Zorith nodded slowly. "Yes, but I still don't fully understand. How can they be so strong, so relentless? They are not even the most advanced species we've encountered." Coulter looked down at the humans below them, his expression thoughtful. "Their strength doesn't come from their technology or their weapons. It comes from something deeper. They fight not just for themselves, but for one another. That is their true strength. That is what makes them dangerous." Zorith's mind raced. He had seen many species fight for survival, but none of them had done so with the same fierce determination that these humans displayed. They didn't rely on superior technology or powerful weapons. They relied on each other, on their ability to adapt, to work together, to overcome any obstacle. It was a power that the aliens had not anticipated. As they continued to observe, the aliens saw more examples of this human strength. Soldiers who had been injured continued to fight, refusing to give up. One soldier, bleeding from a deep wound, helped another who had collapsed from exhaustion. Together, they pressed on, as if nothing could stop them. The aliens watched in awe as these humans, despite their weaknesses, continued to push forward, driven by a force that seemed to come from within. "Do they know they are being watched?" Zorith asked quietly, his gaze still fixed on the soldiers below. Coulter shook his head. "No, they have no idea we are here. But they fight as though they are being watched, as if they are always preparing for something greater. They have no fear of failure. They will do whatever it takes to succeed." Zorith's mind struggled to keep up with the enormity of what he was witnessing. The humans seemed so small, so fragile, but there was something in them that made them powerful. It was their determination, their drive, their willingness to sacrifice everything for their comrades and for their survival. It was something the aliens had not seen in any other species, and it made humanity something far more dangerous than the aliens had ever imagined. As the drills continued, the aliens found themselves becoming more and more fascinated by the humans. They were not just strong, they were unpredictable. They did not follow the rules the aliens had expected. They did not operate like other species. The humans had a raw, untamed power that came from their very nature. It was a power that could not be easily controlled, and it was something the aliens now had to consider very carefully. Zorith turned to Coulter, his voice filled with uncertainty. "What do we do now? How do we deal with them?" Coulter looked at him, his face serious. "We watch, we learn, but we also prepare. These humans are unlike any other species we have encountered. They are capable of great destruction, but they are also capable of great unity. They could be a powerful ally, or a formidable enemy. We need to understand them before we make any decisions." Zorith nodded, still unsure. "But if they are so strong, what if they decide to fight us? What if they see us as a threat?" Coulter's eyes darkened. "Then we will have to decide if we are willing to risk everything to stop them. But for now, we remain hidden. We observe. We learn what drives them. And when the time comes, we will be ready." The two aliens remained in their hidden position, watching the humans below with new understanding. They had come to study a primitive species, but what they had discovered was far beyond their expectations. Humanity was not just a force to be reckoned with. It was a force that could change the very fabric of the universe. And now, the aliens had to decide what role they would play in humanity's future. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the battlefield below, the aliens knew that this was only the beginning. They had only just scratched the surface of what humanity was capable of. And with every passing moment, the question of what to do about them became more pressing. Could the aliens coexist with these humans, or would their paths inevitably collide? Only time would tell. The tension in the air was palpable as the aliens continued to watch the humans. What had started as a simple observation mission was now turning into something far more complicated. The soldiers on the ground had revealed more about themselves than the aliens had ever expected. These humans were not just resilient, they were unpredictable, driven by something deeper than simple survival. And now, the aliens found themselves caught between respect and fear. Zorith and Coulter had seen many species across the galaxy, but nothing like this. The humans seemed to fight not just with their bodies, but with their very souls. They weren't simply trying to win, they were trying to survive. And that survival instinct, paired with their unity, made them stronger than the aliens had anticipated. It was clear that the humans weren't afraid of death, nor were they afraid of failure. They fought as if each battle was their last. And that sense of urgency, that fearlessness, made them dangerous in ways the aliens had never experienced before. As the aliens hovered over the battlefield, still cloaked from view, they were forced to reconsider everything they had believed about humanity. The two aliens had now been watching the humans for hours, and every second added to their understanding. They had observed the soldiers who had pushed through exhaustion, fear, and pain, their faces hard with determination. They had seen them fall, only to rise again, driven by the need to protect their comrades and their nation. The humans had something in their hearts that no advanced technology or superior force could easily overcome. This force, the human will, was both terrifying and fascinating. "I never expected this," Zorith said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "They are so relentless. It's like they are driven by something we can't understand. Even when they are knocked down, they get back up, time after time. What makes them so determined?" Coulter, always the strategist, seemed to be lost in thought. "It's not just about their strength, Zorith. It's their unity. Look at how they operate as a team. When one soldier falls, another is there to take their place. They are not just fighting for themselves, they are fighting for each other. They fight for a purpose that goes beyond their individual lives." Zorith couldn't help but wonder about the implications. What if they decide to fight us? They would not stop. They would fight us to the end. We could lose everything. Coulter's face was unreadable, but his eyes flickered with a mixture of respect and caution. If they are this relentless, this determined, we must understand them. We cannot afford to underestimate them. But at the same time, we must be careful. A species like this, one that will not back down, could be both an ally and a threat. It's not just their technology that makes them dangerous. It's their unity, their spirit. They are stronger than they look, Zorith. Zorith looked down at the battlefield again. He could see that Coulter was right. The humans were not just fighting for victory. They were fighting for something more. A belief in their comrades, in their cause, in each other. It was a strength that transcended simple physical power or advanced weapons. And that was what made them so unpredictable. "We need more information," Zorith said after a long pause. "We need to understand what drives them. Why do they fight this way? What is it that makes them so fearless?" Coulter nodded slowly. "We must observe more, but we must also be ready. If they are this powerful, they could become a danger. They might see us as a threat. And if that happens, we will have to decide what to do next." Zorith didn't like the thought of having to fight these humans, but the reality was undeniable. Their power, their unity, and their unyielding spirit made them a force that could not be ignored. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species they could study and control. Instead, they had found something far more complex, something they couldn't easily understand or predict. Over the next few days, the aliens continued to monitor the humans, carefully watching their drills and observing their behavior. They were especially interested in the way the humans interacted with one another. The soldiers had formed tight-knit groups, each member playing a crucial role in the success of the team. There were no weak links. Every soldier had a purpose, and every soldier worked to support the others. It was a system of cooperation and trust that the aliens found both impressive and unsettling. As they watched, the aliens began to see patterns emerge. The humans had a clear hierarchy. Each soldier had a specific role, and there was a strong sense of duty to one's comrades. But what stood out to the aliens was the deep sense of loyalty that each soldier seemed to have toward the others. They were not just fighting for their nation, they were fighting for their friends, their families, their fellow soldiers. The idea of sacrifice was deeply ingrained in their psyche, and that made them incredibly powerful. One soldier in particular caught the aliens' attention. He was a leader, a commander who seemed to inspire his troops in a way that was almost magnetic. His presence was commanding, and the soldiers followed his orders with unwavering trust. Even when things went wrong, he remained calm, guiding his troops through chaos with a clear sense of purpose. The aliens watched him, fascinated by his ability to keep his team focused and unified, even in the most difficult of circumstances. Zorith was struck by the commander's leadership. How does he do it? How does he keep them so focused, even when everything is falling apart? Coulter studied the commander carefully. It's not just his words, it's his actions. He leads by example. The soldiers respect him because they know he would never ask them to do something he wouldn't do himself. They see his strength, his determination, and they follow him because they believe in him. Zorith couldn't help but be impressed. He's like a symbol of everything they stand for. Coulter nodded. Yes, and that is what makes humans so dangerous. They are not just fighting for survival, they are fighting for something greater. They are fighting for each other, for their ideals, and for the future. They are driven by a purpose that cannot be easily shaken. The aliens knew that they had only begun to scratch the surface of what made humanity so powerful. They had come to Earth expecting to study a primitive species, but what they had found was a force unlike anything they had ever encountered before. The question now was not whether humanity was a threat. It was whether the aliens could find a way to coexist with them, or if the two species would be forced into a collision that neither side could avoid. As the days passed and the humans continued their drills, the aliens realized that they were no longer just observers. They were part of a much larger story, one that was still unfolding, and one that would ultimately determine the future of both their species. The days continued to pass, and the aliens found themselves trapped between admiration and fear. What they had witnessed in the humans was something far more complex than they had initially thought. The soldiers' unity, their fierce determination, and their willingness to sacrifice for one another made them unlike any species the aliens had encountered. The humans' ability to persist, to keep fighting when everything seemed lost, was unlike any force the aliens had ever studied. It was both humbling and terrifying. Zorith couldn't stop thinking about the commander they had observed, the one who led his troops with such calm authority, even in the most chaotic situations. His strength didn't come from his rank, nor from any weapon. It came from his unshakable belief in his comrades and his purpose. Zorith had watched as the commander rallied his troops, inspiring them to push forward even when defeat seemed certain. The humans weren't just soldiers. They were a community, bound together by a shared belief in their cause. And that made them a far greater threat than Zorith had ever imagined. These humans, Zorith began, his voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. They are not just fighting for victory. They fight for each other, for something bigger than themselves. How do we stop them if we need to? Coulter, ever the strategist, stood silent for a moment. His mind was working through the possibilities. He had always believed in the power of observation, in gathering intelligence before making any decision. But what he had seen on Earth was something entirely different. The humans were not only dangerous because of their advanced weapons or their technology. They were dangerous because of their unity, their spirit. And that was something that no amount of firepower or strategy could easily overcome. "I don't know," Coulter finally replied. "We've never encountered a species like this before. They don't fight for power or glory. They fight for survival, for each other. Their strength lies in their bonds, in their unwavering determination to protect one another. That makes them unpredictable. They don't follow the rules we've come to expect from other species. And that makes them dangerous." Zorith thought about Coulter's words. He had been trained to see patterns, to predict behavior based on observation. But the humans defied those patterns. They didn't fight with the same logic that the aliens had come to rely on. Instead, they fought with their hearts, with everything they had. And that made them a force to be reckoned with. As the aliens continued to watch, they saw the humans take their drills to the next level. The exercises became more intense, pushing the soldiers to their physical and mental limits. Yet, even in the most grueling moments, the humans didn't falter. When one soldier stumbled, another was there to pick them up. When a team was separated, they found a way to reunite. They adapted quickly, working together to overcome every obstacle in their path. The unity they shared was their true strength, and it was something that the aliens couldn't ignore. Zorith felt a growing sense of unease as he watched. These humans were not weak. They were strong in ways that the aliens hadn't fully understood. And the more the aliens observed, the more they realized that they were not dealing with just a military force. They were dealing with a species that had the potential to change the course of history. "I think we've seen enough," Zorith said, his voice tinged with a mix of respect and uncertainty. "They are not what we thought they were. These humans, they could be a powerful force for good or ill, and we don't fully understand them yet." Coulter agreed. "We need more time. We need to understand why they are the way they are, what drives them, what makes them so relentless. We've seen their strength, but we've only just begun to understand their true power." With that, the aliens decided to take a step back. They would continue their observation, but they would do so with caution. The humans had revealed their greatest strength, their unity. But the question remained, how far would they go to protect that unity? Would they fight for survival at any cost, even if it meant clashing with the aliens? The aliens had no answers yet. They only knew that the humans were not to be underestimated. Their strength was not in their technology or their weapons. It was in their hearts. And that was something the aliens had to reckon with. The days turned into weeks, and the aliens remained hidden, watching the humans as they continued their drills. But something else was happening in the background. The humans were not just training to fight. They were preparing for something much bigger. The commander, the one who had so impressed the aliens, was now leading his troops in more complex maneuvers. The humans were preparing for a war, though they didn't yet know who the enemy would be. As the humans continued their training, the aliens started to feel a sense of urgency. They had watched long enough. They needed to decide what to do with the information they had gathered. The humans were not just a primitive species. They were a potential threat, one that could shape the future of the galaxy. But they could also be something else. They could be allies. If only the aliens could find a way to approach them without triggering conflict. Zorith and Coulter both knew that the time for passive observation was coming to an end. The humans had shown their strength, their unity, and their drive to survive. But what would happen when they realized they were not alone? What would they do when they discovered that aliens were watching them, studying them? The two aliens exchanged a glance, and Coulter spoke first. "It's time to decide, Zorith. We've seen what the humans are capable of. The question now is whether we can coexist with them. Or will we be forced to confront them, as we have so many other species?" Zorith looked out at the humans below, his mind racing with possibilities. The fate of their encounter with humanity was uncertain, but one thing was clear. This was not a battle that could be won with weapons alone. The humans had something far greater than technology or power. They had each other, and that made them formidable in a way the aliens hadn't anticipated. "We can't fight them like we fought other species," Zorith said quietly. "But can we reach them? Can we learn from them? Or are we too different, too far removed from what they are?" Coulter didn't answer immediately. He continued to watch the humans, their drills now taking on a new intensity as the sun set in the distance. The future was uncertain, and the aliens knew they had to choose carefully. The path they chose could either lead to destruction, or a future where the two species could learn to coexist. But for now, they could only watch and wait.